definitely a lot happening and hitting the fan here. And we're going to go over some of that information right out the gate. The war drums are definitely beating louder. We're going to get into some of those topics here. Couple of different sources I'm looking at here with the war stuff. I just don't see how this can continue that much longer. I know Trump is about to make a statement tomorrow. Special message with Pete, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. So probably going to be addressing the whole war in Venezuela, or the V for Vendetta. Actually, we're calling it V for Venezuela because I believe this will be the linchpin, the first domino to fall that ultimately is going to scatter everything to the four winds. We're sowing right now to the wind. We're about to reap a whirlwind. I really believe America is about to reap the whirlwind with what we're about to do. And I know that it's in our interest, I guess, energy-wise, because we need this energy, we need this oil. But why do we have to lie? Why do we have to connive and make something that it's not? Right out the gate, they should have just said, "Hey, it's about the oil. It's about our oil bases, or our infrastructure that we ourselves created." But we're gonna make it seem like, it's about drug runners. Or, yeah, we're going to release the Epstein files, but it's a hoax now, and you're all crazy. And because you're promoting a Democrat hoax, I don't want you as my followers or my supporters anymore. I don't care. Oh, but now it's legit. Okay, we'll release, but we're going to redact 70% of it. We're going to hide it. It's a security risk now. It's no longer a hoax now. Now it's just a security, national security issue. We can't release it. Oh, okay. Well, why don't they just? I guess the best thing to do is just to be honest as much as possible, because this is just a PR nightmare. Nobody trust. And then look at the economy. They're gaslighting us on the economy. The economy is literally falling apart right before our very eyes. It's affecting everybody's pocketbook. I don't care how much they've lowered gas. I don't care how much he says it's a golden age. He still continually blames Biden for all the mess. Well, if it's the golden age and everybody loves our economy around the world, then why are they blaming Biden still? Shouldn't it be like soaring? Everybody should be happy. But that's like long gone in the past, isn't it? Why do we got to keep bringing all that up? Because it's not a golden age. It's not a golden age. And they're about to switch out the almighty dollar for crypto-based world reserve currency. This is according to Trump a few days ago. Not to mention the fact that gold and silver, which are huge indicators of chaos and nervous investors, it's a big indicator. It's going through the all-time highs once again today. I think I saw silver almost at $70 an ounce. $70 an ounce. Gold up there almost $4,400 an ounce. I think it's right up there. You guys, war is very close. It is very close. And some would say, well, you've been saying that for a long time, Robert. Well, I'm saying it again, and I'm beating the drum even louder now. Okay? Just so you know. There's a reason we haven't gone into Venezuela yet. And it may be that we don't want a hot war right this second. Maybe they need to set everything up, because it's going to be bad when it goes. And is China and Russia going to be involved? I know they're there. They've got Russian assets in Venezuela, probably all around those oil fields as well. And if anything happens to a Russian or a Chinese person, for that matter, I can only imagine what may be the repercussions. You got Putin calling European leaders pigs. I mean, when you have rhetoric like that, that's never... Putin's always been very cool, calm, and collect. This whole time, even through the whole midst of everything that's been going on, in terms of his foreign policy image and statements. He never uses language like that. And now and you can tell he's disgusted, he's angry, and he's ready to go to war as of the last few days. So you can just sit there and say that I'm, crying wolf or whatever. So I know there's been people that have said that in the comments at certain points, but, for anybody that has eyes or a brain, it's very clear what's happening. Not to mention the fact that our food is insecure. Our food supply is very insecure. Not to mention I believe our oil supply is very insecure as well. I just think that if war breaks out, your prices at the gas pump are going to exponentially skyrocket. I'll just tell you that right now. And that's going to justify, I'm sure, what they're doing, at least in people's minds. People are not going to know what to think. They're going to be like, well, who else do we have to support? We can't go against our administration because obviously they're the ones watching over everything. We're going to just have to hope and trust and wave the American flag and go along with whatever. Send our sons and daughters into harm's way and just hope and pray that we don't, get blown up. I know it's bad news, but unfortunately, that's the situation. The pennies are being 86'd. And I look at the penny going away as a direct connection to the dollar. It's basically the dollar is going away. Yeah, Medved, very, very true. Pablo is absolutely right. Medved and Lavrov is pretty cool too. I mean, he's normally not very, confrontive. He doesn't have that verbiage that's just, incendiary. But obviously Medved does, and he's kind of playing the bad cop, But Lavrov has been recently, and so has Medved, and now you've got Putin. Now, when Putin starts doing it, that's when you should be worried about something going down. This is a green cup. That's why it's see-through there. My green screen's showing up as green. But how's it going, Grabbing? Good to see you, Dog Whisperer, Sherry, Teresa Valdez, as I said, Pablo and Randall. So let's go ahead and look at some of this info. I'm going to read a little transcript here, and then I'm going to show you guys a website from a couple different sources to kind of give you an inside look into what's really happening here. One of the podcasters I like to listen to, or streamers that I like to, actually he's not a streamer, he's more of just a video guy. And he's basically doing some commentary on what he thinks is happening here, but he says, we got to get prepared for what's coming. Now, in San Francisco, there was this major, and this is kind of some of the news. In San Francisco, there was a major power outage yesterday. I don't know if you guys heard about that. But what was interesting to note about this particular power outage is that it was due to a fire at one substation. Okay, one substation basically disrupted power to 130,000 people. It has been hypothesized by electrical engineers who are very well respected. They've made documentaries on this before that if you were to take out just a few of these major transformers, these major substations throughout the United States, and a few is just a couple dozen, you can effectively burn down the electricity or the entirety of the power grid for a prolonged period of time due to the way that these things are set up, Can you imagine if there was some kind of planned, well-coordinated and executed operation against our power grid? And we're talking about like a physical attack that would disrupt the grid. And I've heard it talked about that the grid is very interconnected. You know, when I was living in California a while back, this was probably, 90s or something like that. I remember mid 90s, late 90s maybe. There was a power outage that affected California. It affected like 4 or 5 states because of the interconnectiveness. And who knows if maybe it was something else going on that we didn't know about. But this thing the power was out for almost 24 hours, and people were starting to get really fearful. I remember looking out over the city, and it was black. Like, it was just nobody there. And I say city, it was probably like suburbs or something like that. Suburbs, you know, but still, you see lights everywhere, you know, but all you see is cars driving down the main streets. That's all you could see. And every once in a while you'd see a generator having some lights here or some lights here, but it went on for over 24 hours. And I remember stores lost all of their food. They had to throw out all their food because, you know, obviously they can't keep it running. Generators can only last so long. Many times they don't even have generators, especially for all the freezers that they have. They don't have that kind of generating power. And so all the food went bad. People started to becoming a little bit fearful because who knows when things are gone that long, what happens? Just a 2 days without power and people will start losing their minds. Literally, they will start losing their minds. And if you're not familiar with what happens when people don't have access to food or power, it becomes a free-for-all, and people will do things that you're not normally expecting them to do. They will go into that base, you know, survival instinct kind of mindset, and it gets worse as the days go on. So even after 3 days, you're pretty much almost in Mad Max after about 3 days. Especially if you can't get let's just say you didn't fill up your car, you have no gas, you have no water, because it affects the power supply to pressurized water for city. So you have no water. Food's out, can't get to the stores because everything's bad. Did you stock up? Oh, a lot of people they only buy a day's worth of food at a time. There are some people that go to the supermarket every day just to buy what they need. They don't have money to stock up. Or maybe they're just too lazy to stock up. Maybe they don't think that the stores will ever be down, you know, at all, you know? It's like COVID, remember? When COVID hit and everything disappeared? But it says they've made documentaries on this before, and if you were to take out just a few of these major transformers, these major substations throughout the United States, just a few of them, or a couple of dozen, you can effectively burn down the entirety of the grid, of the power grid, for a prolonged period of time due to the way that things are worked, the way they're interdependent. These substations are not protected by air defense. They're not guarded typically. Maybe there's a security guard or something like that, but if there is ever a global conflict, even the air defense miraculously was able to stop, even if the air defenses were miraculously to stop incoming ICBMs, which it won't, there would be the risk of an asymmetrical attack. And that's what an asymmetrical attack is. It's kind of like going after soft targets that ultimately are very effective, that are probably not as well, you know, defended against and or guarded or hardened. But, you know, that is what we call critical infrastructure. And there's a lot of other reasons to worry about critical infrastructure. We're talking about, you know, hacks electronically. And you're talking about your grid in the sense of dams, you know, like dams, shutting off dams or shutting off power stations, or water stations, right, where the water is coming from your cities. You know, that's critical infrastructure. So that would just cause a huge mess. But anyways, he goes on to say, if we find ourselves in a less than World War II apocalypse scenario, and it's more of a hybrid war, and he's talking about less of a kinetic type conflict, but more of a hybrid kind of war, these substations will be attacked, and they're soft targets. All right? Okay. And they're definitely on the hit list. And how many people we got in this country that hate America, that came over the borders? In the millions, right? If this were to happen in Canada, where we experienced recently a minus 30-degree power outage We're talking about minus 30 degrees and there's no power. When that happens, there's no heat pumps, there's no forced air, there's no natural gas because it is all regulated with electricity. And if you have and you have to have a backup plan. You know, I know what he's talking about because I live in an area that's like a tundra in the winter. It gets down to like below zero, you know, negatives. And you have to have supplies. You have to be ready. You have to be thinking ahead. And we had a power outage the other day because the winds were like almost 100 miles an hour and blew down all kinds of trees. We were out of power. We'd just go out there and plug in our generator and get it going again. And, you know, all the power's back up. But a lot of people don't prepare for things like this. They're so used to always turning on always having it working. They probably put you into this state of dependence, and it's always going to be their kind of mindset. So that when really when it's really not there, people are going to lose their minds. So you have to have a backup plan. Like solar panels. You know, that's why we were pushing solar panel generators. We were talking about all that stuff and the different types of things you need to prepare for in case there is a power grid outage. You know, how are you going to cook your food? Do you know how to make fire? Do you have extra food in the pantry? You know, like that storable, that long store type food that is going to last for a little bit. You know, do you have security kind of tools? You know, things that you're going to have to protect your house if you got people that are trying to maraud and come in trying to, want to take what you got. You know, you got to be thinking about that too, or whatever else they might want to do. There's a way you can heat your home. How do you heat your home? Do you have a fireplace? You know, what happens if it's really cold? You better have a fireplace. You got a diesel heater. You got diesel, propane. You know, sometimes you get those propane generators. It's very hard to store gas. Sometimes it's better to have propane because propane lasts a lot longer and you can have a generator that uses propane. And propane stores forever. You can put it in one of them big 500-gallon tanks and it'll be there forever. And that's a lot of power if you got a generator hooked up to your propane tank. But diesel, you can get diesel heaters, diesel or gas or whatever. He goes on to say that you better have a contingency plan. As much as we all like amusing ourselves to death with the doom scroll stuff, we have to put our money where our mouth is and take action, as well as because of what we're talking about here. There is a dark, cold, material reality to it, which is a grid down situation. And that's true. And if we're not prepared for that, then it's going to be very problematic, and we're going to be very vulnerable to these types of attacks. Now that attack in San Francisco only lasted 24 hours, it was an attack. Okay, I'm not saying attack. I probably shouldn't say that because we don't know if it was yet. But regardless, one substation. But regardless of one substation, okay, now there's a cascading effect. It's like this, you would say, a amplification that happens if you bring down multiple substations. Can you imagine if there were multiple ones that are all very vital in the grid itself and they know which ones to target? Can you imagine the cascading effect that would have on large population centers? I mean, can you imagine 5 million people being out of electricity for more than 24 hours? Or let's just say, because, when you destroy these types of, this type of equipment, we're talking about equipment that you can't just go out and buy another one really quickly and restore. We're talking about equipment that is going to take a while to connect everything. We're not just talking about power lines. We're not just talking about transformers. We're talking about something that is significant, and these things are very important, and they're hard to get, and they take time to get in. I've looked into that in the past, and it's something that people should be really thinking about. You remember Trump when he came in, and he was talking about having dedicated power stations for AI because our grid is very unreliable and it's prone to go down and it's capable of being compromised. He said that. And he said we need to have a dedicated power station for every single one of these AI data centers because we need it. That's our priority, right? That we need to keep those things working and running. What about the people? You know, what about the grid itself? But he did say that. If you don't remember that, a lot of people were like, well, thought that was kind of weird, you know? Like we're going to put all this money into the AI stuff and we're sucking energy right out of the public sector. And that's why our energy prices are going through the roof is because we need AI. We need to be making all this stuff that, you know, these funny videos and unreality videos that nobody can now tell the difference between what's real and what's not. And, you know, we have to have this AI warfare mindset because if we don't, well, we're going to be overtaken by, you know, our enemies. China is going to beat us to the bomb. You know, it's kind of like the race for nuclear you know, the nuclear button. Whoever was the first to get there is going to rule the world. And that's the same thing with AI because it is that dangerous. It is that dangerous. And so we need to dedicate all this power. And this is, I think, another reason why we're going into Venezuela, not just for AI, but for war. I think that's why they want this oil. And it is a war against Russia and China. And Iran, because Iran's really deeply embedded there too. So all of this stuff's going to hit the fan. They're getting ready in Israel to go after Iran now real soon. So they're talking to Trump here this week, I think it is. They're meeting with, actually it's the 29th. Netanyahu's going to be having a meeting with Trump in real space. I think he's coming here tomorrow. I think he's going to Mar-a-Lago. And what they're saying he's going to do is ask permission to go ahead and hit Iran. So that's fixing to happen. And he goes on to say, it's not a one-tune thing. If you take down 2 or 3 of these power stations, it disrupts the way that the network can route electricity, and it could bring down electricity to the entire city. Okay, these are just things that you need to prepare for, and as wars are ramping up abroad, you will see more of this here, whether cyber or kinetic. And like I said, there's cyber attacks that could happen against these power grid stations as well as actual kinetic. There's a myriad of ways these substations can be attacked, and they are indeed soft targets. In fact, I'm surprised that it hasn't happened more frequently already, and I am too. If you want, there's still, let's see, a few different types of systems left. Okay, so basically that would be like, I don't know, getting yourself set up with solar generator. You might want to do that. Let me know if you want, because I can get you discounts. I think I can still get discount codes. I have to look, because we used to have a little store where we were getting people set up on that kind of stuff. But anyways, just message me if you're interested. blazingpress@gmail.com. If you want something, tell me what you want in the EcoFlow category, and tell me the best price that you've seen it at, and I'll see if I can beat it. All right. There's a lot of different types of units you can get. You know, Delta Pros, Delta Pro 3, those are the best ones, I think, that are kind of compact and portable, but they generate huge amounts of energy from just having some light. It doesn't even have to be direct sunlight either, but at least you can charge your batteries and you can have something there if you don't want fuel. But I would say, think about a solar generator. But you should have other types of generators. You should have gas. You should have propane in case you need to charge your batteries back up and you don't have a good sunshine or something like that. You might want to think about that too, but always have backups. It's called redundancy, right? Have a redundant backup system. So going on, it says, yeah, everything is taking place now where it's actually affecting smaller businesses. So this is why a lot of stores, especially small to medium mom and pop type businesses, are going out of business because of the tariffs. Tariffs are affecting hugely, this type of thing. but I think it's going to get worse as things really do hit the fan. And you're talking about imports from China also eating the cost or passing the cost on to you as a consumer in the product itself. That's also a problem, and I think prices have risen in the electronic department, especially if you're talking about chips and things that are, everything has a chip in it now. You know, everything's made in China, at least the components. A lot of components are, and sometimes it is put together in the United States. They can say, oh, yeah, it was made in USA, but no, everything else was sourced. Even shirts, you know, like they might say, oh, this was made in the USA because a button was sewn on, but everything else was made in China or Taiwan or somewhere else. But, oh, we put a button on it. That means it was made in the USA. They legally can do that. So you got to understand, in order to get set up before everything hits the fan, you better do it quick. Let's see. Let's see what else we got here. It says here that there was another tanker that was supposedly commandeered by the U.S. Coast Guard, another one. Was it Iran's tanker? I heard it had something to do with China. So the U.S. Coast Guard reportedly in pursuit of the Bella, a Panama flagged tanker after it refused boarding. The vessel is on the sanctions list and en route to Venezuela. There was one that was just picked up, I think yesterday. It had a 1.8 million barrels of oil that was intended for China. So, of course, this is an attack on China. Make no mistake about it. This was coming from Venezuela. Remember, we've got the oil. Now, some of these tankers are coming out with escorts from Venezuela and their Navy. So if something happens where we end up having a shootout with a Venezuelan vessel, I'm telling you, it's going to hit the fan. So it goes on to say, make no mistake about it, regardless of Tucker Carlson's failed predictions, Trump is never going to announce it anyways. A blockade is war, and it is. Anytime there's a blockade, it's an act of war. And that's what we're doing right now in Venezuela. It's the same thing that happened that brought us into World War II. We blockaded the island of Japan. And it wasn't there too long thereafter that Japan sneak attacked us at Pearl Harbor. Now, some would say historically that was a planned and a prepared in advance, that we knew that they were going to attack us because we wanted to jump into the war and have a reason for it. And we knew that they were going to attack us because of what we were doing. You basically cut off their food, their water. Everything that Japan is as an island is dependent on imports, right? And so if you cut off everything, then obviously they're going to do something. you know. And so Venezuela, if you're doing this not just to Venezuela, but it is affecting China because a lot of their oil comes from from Venezuela into China, and also Russia. Don't you think they're going to do something if we start messing around with their energy supply and their little golden goose there in our backyard? Because they're controlling it right now. We used to be in control, and this is why Trump is saying, "Oh, well, we need to take back what is ours. That oil is ours." That's what Trump's now saying. It's not about the drugs now. Now it's about, hey, that's ours. That's our oil. That's what he's now saying. But we already knew that from the beginning. We were telling everybody it was about the oil, right? And it was obviously about China and Russia. But hey, this is scary stuff when you think about possible conflict with China and Russia. This isn't just about Venezuela. All right, so this blockade war, it is inevitable. It's going to be a war with Venezuela unless Maduro flees and the reigning government there folds, and they put in their puppet dictator, Machado, and everybody gets their way, and everybody makes their money. And of course, this whole false pretense of narco terrorists has now completely dissolved in the narrative. Have you noticed that over the span of 24 hours, it is no longer about narcotics coming in to the United States from Venezuela, which is which was the way it was from the start. Complete and utter 0% of fentanyl comes from Venezuela. And that's true. There is no fentanyl that comes from Venezuela. 10% of cocaine that comes into the United States comes from Venezuela. That's about it. Right? Most all of the fentanyl that's coming in is coming from China via Mexico and the cartels. So we should be attacking Mexico right now. Okay, so maybe there is some cocaine and some other stuff. I mean, most of that was orchestrated, initiated by the CIA long ago. Anyways, regardless, now that the narrative has shifted to it being about, well, they owe us money because they nationalized all the oil fields. They kicked out our people, so they owe us money. They owe us land. That's the narrative now. So the narrative has completely shifted. So why wasn't the focus on this before? So what this tells me is that because they've gone mask off so quick, there's a sign that they're rushing, that this kind of does feel like it, that they're rushing. Okay, time is of the essence. That's what's going on here. Time is of the essence. Because usually they would draw it out, you know, the false pretense much longer, whether it was, you know, weapons of mass destruction, or where they were under risk of preemptive attack from said country, or the risk of terrorism or whatnot. That's usually what would happen. It would be drawn out. It would be kind of more blending in. This is too stark of a you know, it's too quick. Everybody knows that it's a bunch of BS, right? And so they're not allowing it to kind of blend in the transition to where we're at now. Why? Because they are being rushed to war. And so it's going to break out anytime. I really think that it's going to happen pretty soon. I told people the other day, I said, I think it's going to probably happen within the next week. But, you know, if it extends out a little longer than that, it seems to be coinciding with what's going on with Israel and Iran. And this is why Netanyahu's going to meet Trump on the 29th. So he goes on to say, typically they draw out a little bit longer. Now they just don't even care anymore, because it seems as though their supporters, most of which are MAGA, are completely oblivious to this, or they just disregarded disregarded altogether as something worthy of note. So it looks like they're going to go to war with Venezuela. They're amassing a huge armada of ships at the time of making this video, which was just 24 hours ago, or less. Actually, it was only a few hours ago. We also have threats by Senator Lindsey Graham to seize ships that are not only carrying this Venezuelan oil, in addition to Iranian oil, but also carrying Russian oil, mirroring the current U.S. actions against Venezuela. He also tried to encourage Trump, again today, to send Tomahawk missiles into Russia as well via Ukraine, right? And we're not talking about sending them in there, but sending them in flight into Russia. This is Lindsey Graham. So, and in Sweden, they detained a Russian container ship. It's called Adler, due to, and that's a snake, by the way, an Adler. So we're going to be stopping snakes on the way. This ship by the name of Adler was due to suspected arms transport after the vessel suffered engine failure in territorial waters. They will likely prompt the Russians to up their security on their commercial vessels that transit those straits. And who knows, maybe they shut off the engines by some kind of EMP type thing just so they could board it, right? Kind of under the cover of, oh, you guys had an accident, we're out here to help you. We're going to come aboard there and get on there and check out what you got there. So a lot is happening on the high seas. Shiver me timbers. Regardless, the U.S. The U.S. was supposed to be the guarantor of security in maritime corridors, and it seems as though they're now violating their own laws and that they're engaged in wholesale piracy. Arr, matey, don't you dare be saying that about the U.S. or you're going to walk the plank, Canadian. Don't you dare. Or you're going to swab the deck. Now, people will say, well, this is sanctions and illegal vessels, and that this is something that has been unilaterally imposed by the United States. No other country, with the exception of their cuisine underlying states, is going to dignify that designation as a rogue state. I mean, nations should have the right to trade as they please. And this is what a lot of people are doing. They're making excuses for this. But hey, these excuses are going to get us all into a hot war, and your sons and daughters are going to be out there in the front lines. And this is going to be worse than Vietnam. I'm going to tell you what right now. And if you are interdicting them, then that's a declaration of war. That's exactly what this is. Now, one could make the case that you should not be exchanging petrodollars. And I think that's the case that effectively relates to sanctions. And it's in a sanctions regime. You can't trade in U.S. dollars for various commodities. At least that's how I understand it. Now you can still trade for gold. And speaking of which, China has imported record amounts of gold from Russia this year. Okay, so basically, that's kind of where we're at on that. And there's more to talk about on that. Let's on that front. Let me go ahead and pull up this other article that I was looking at here. And I didn't really go into the depths of this yet, but we can do that. And that would be Michael Schneider. I don't know if you know who Michael Schneider is. Let's take a look at our Telegram here real quick before we do. Let's see here. Okay, so we're on Telegram, and it's talking here with the Israeli War Room site here that I think it's X. No, this is True Social. It looks like True Social. Or maybe it is X. Western intelligence sources now say that unusual aerial activity was detected in Iran over the last 24 hours. Iranian International reported the activity includes unusual movements and coordination between drone, missile, and air defense units. Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Islamic Jihad, the Iraqi militias, and Fatah have moved drones, missiles, and air defenses units into position for war against Israel. Looks like they're expecting something here pretty soon. Charlie Kirk's wife, Erica, says that the TPS is grifting. She says that by mistake. Freudian slip. Right? And then they go into having this tent replica of where Charlie Kirk was shot at TPS USA. Why? Why do that? I mean, gosh. She should have been out of the limelight for a long time. She should still be grieving. I don't think she should be out there, talking to Nicki Minaj. I mean, Nicki Minaj, seriously? Saying that she's a representative of the Christian faith now? I think that they've lost so many numbers. So many people have left in support of TPS USA that because there's so many weird things going on there in the news, especially with all this stuff going on. Oh, my gosh. It is such a drama. And I've been following it. I'm not going to go into all the details, but, when you got Candace Owen, Tucker, and, Steve Bannon and, Erica Kerr. I mean, it's just everything is just hitting the fan. And don't forget Ben Shapiro and the whole Israeli, part of the major part of piece to this puzzle. This is huge, and I think it's there to disrupt people's attention away from really what's going on, too. It could be a distraction, but it is definitely interesting to see what's happening there because it does look like there's been something going on very nefarious. Obviously, him being shot, that was just terrible, but what's really going on with that? Are we being told the truth? There's a lot that's being uncovered that's kind of interesting. But anyways, getting back to the reasons for why this happened, why would they put a replica tent with where Charlie Kirk was shot as if it's some kind of display where people can get their pictures taken? People go in there and they like, hi, Dad, I want to go in here and get my picture taken where Charlie was shot. You know, like, that just sounds like a grift to me. I don't know. I mean, they're probably not making money off it, but they're glorifying it. They're glorifying it. Why? Why would you glorify something like that? Here's Israel says to warn U.S. that Iran could use missile launch exercise as cover to strike. This is according to the Times of Israel. The army chief hinting at a potential new war with Iran says that the IDF will strike whatever is required or wherever required, wherever. So this could potentially be in other countries, I guess, wherever they're at, I guess. And could that mean that, you know, if there's an operation against Israelis in, let's just say, Australia, that the Israelis could go in there and do something? Or if there's some big event that happens in the United States and they feel like they need to protect their people, they'll come over here too? Or what? What does he mean by wherever? Wherever required? Here's the price of silver continuing to skyrocket. This is only boding bad for, you know, geopolitical events that are unfolding at this very moment. Look at silver and look at gold, almost at $4,400 an ounce. All-time highs of silver, almost $70 an ounce. Trump is set to make a major announcement tomorrow at Mar-a-Lago, and he's going to be right there with Pete Hegseth, so we're going to be monitoring that. And by the way, make sure you get connected to and register for the new app. The new app has been submitted, and we're just waiting for it to be approved. Also, get behind what we're doing. Please support what we're doing. We definitely need your support to continue on. And I'm still walking by faith here because we don't have as much coming in as we need, but it is coming in, and it's slowly trickling in. So we need to turn that faucet on a little bit harder here, guys. So let's keep moving forward. I'm just taking it out there and just waiting on the Lord to pour out what we need to keep this going. So please stand behind us and hit those links to support what we're doing. But the registration is there. You can see what the app is going to look like, and the app will have all the features for notifications. We are already doing text alerts, so if you're on the text alert list. And by the way, if you don't get text alerts and you signed up previously, we had an older app that we ended up discarding after a couple of days or so after we got into it. We realized it was twice as expensive and it had less features. Okay. And it was a site that was just getting into this kind of thing, so they didn't have all their ducks in a row, and we just wanted to make sure that we got on the right bandwagon here as we developed. So we discarded that. So if you signed up to that old app, get rid of that old app. Okay. If you have an app on your phone, get rid of that. Okay. The one that's coming out will be downloaded directly from Apple and Android, and it will have our icon directly on the store. Okay, that one hasn't come out yet, but you can register for it now by going to the link in the description below. Honey, can you post that link? If you can, post that link so everybody knows how to do it. I know I had a little confusion with the whole problem, and, you know, we're very sorry we got out there without having done the research properly. We should have waited a little bit before we went headlong into that old app. Nicki Minaj, why would she be a representation? Why would she be a representative of the Christian church, according to Erica Kirk? Because this woman is known as like the rap. And if you don't know who she is, I mean, it's embarrassing to even have to explain what she has done. I can't even bring myself to even say what she's done. And now she's going to represent the Christian church. Well, she had an experience when she was younger and she was a Christian, and she obviously wanted to praise Trump and Vance and all the great things that are happening. And maybe this is a political thing. Maybe she got paid huge sums of money to do this. And she knows the power is there because the country's behind what's going on. Obviously, the leadership of the U.S. is now fully behind what's going on there at the young people of TPS USA. TPUSA. And obviously that's the pool what they're going to draw from when the war begins, right? All those young people. So they have to make sure they shore up their approval there. And what better way than to have a high profile entertainment figure and musician, right? But how disgusting is her content? Her content is so utterly sinful. I mean, no. I've looked at all this and it's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. We did an interesting video on this today on the food security. Why do I have two of those there? There should have only been one. I did that twice. Let me get rid of that. So food spraying now, RNA spray, same stuff that you would say is splicing DNA technologies that were in the COVID shots are now being liberally sprayed all over your vegetables, and not to mention injected into your chickens and your pork and your beef, and not to mention the fact that China now owns all of our hog producing farms all across the United States, not to mention our beef also on the chopping block. So I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on, but we have a video that's going viral right now. It's already got we posted it yesterday. It's already got almost 200,000 views, and it's all about that. It's RFK talking about how China has taken over our pork supplies. Have you seen that? Well, it's got 150,000 views in the last. It takes a little while to catch up, but I think it's getting close to 200,000 views. And that was just posted yesterday. And there's a reason why it's going viral, because it's a shocking awareness that Americans are now waking up to the fact that we're not in control of our food supply, whether it's pork, beef, or chicken. Okay? That China is deeply embedded in owning farms that are large, and they monopolize the industry. Okay? So this is a stealth famine we told everybody was going to come upon the whole country if we ever happen to go to war with China. You don't think that they don't have us where they control things here within? Yeah, they do. Right out of RFK's own mouth 2 years ago. Now he's in the administration. He's not saying anything about it. Why? This is why it's going viral. So go check it out. Okay, so on that note, let's see if we can go look at Schneider's information. We're talking about Michael. He's a blogger. He has a Substack. And we're going to go check out some of what he said. Let's see really quickly. We can get that. Yeah, there's also new footage of oil tankers being taken over or boarded by Coast Guard from today. Brazil's President Lula warns U.S. intervention in Venezuela could be catastrophic. That's what I've been telling everybody. It's going to be like it's going to be the first domino in V for Venezuela, or V for Vendetta. If you didn't see the movie, that's when the first domino is hit. Venezuela is going to be the domino. An armed intervention in Venezuela would be a humanitarian catastrophe for the hemisphere and a dangerous precedent for the whole of the world. And yes, Donald Trump will do that. This is some of the declassified information or video that's coming out for the boarding of that one tanker today or yesterday. Wow, they just basically just flew right over the top of it and dropped a bunch of commandos onto the deck late at night, huh? Yeah, they run up there and commandeer it just like they did the other one. Bunch of armed commandos operation. Saturday Night Live mocks President Trump over the botched release of the Epstein files. This I gotta see. You know, a lot of this stuff should be understood as comedy, but you know, in the sense of the court jester, you need to take note of what's being said, because the truth behind what's being said is very, even though it's in jest, should be taken note of, because this is the feeling of many. So let's take a listen and see. I haven't heard this one yet, so I'm kind of curious. Okay, well, that wasn't good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Where is my article here I'm looking for? Oh, Christian Amir is now saying, if anybody knows Amir, things to do. The to-do list, the bucket list of Israel here for 2026. Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas, Gaza, Iran, RGC, establishment of Messiah on the rebuilt Temple Mount, chaos in the world. Oh, I just added that. But that's kind of what's going to come down, though. That's what's actually going to happen. Yeah, okay, here it is. All right, so let's go ahead and look at Michael Snyder's Substack here, just as a shout out to Michael. Whoops. Let's see if I can get this up and running here. Let's see, where is my window? The drumbeats of war are getting closer and closer. They're getting louder, I should say, louder and louder. Louder and louder with Crowder. All right, so it says here, hundreds of millions of people all over the world, Western world, are enjoying the holiday season as if nothing has changed. But meanwhile, the pounding of the war drums just continues to intensify. If the world keeps going down this path, next year's holiday season could look completely different. Unfortunately, most people seem to assume that everything will magically work out just fine. That greatly frustrates me, because ignoring the reality of the crisis that we are facing is not going to fix anything. If ordinary citizens in the Western world truly understood what was at stake, they would be going completely ballistic right now. That's true. Global war is rapidly approaching, but the vast majority of our entertainment-addicted population doesn't seem to get it, or to get this. Over the weekend, there were some very alarming new developments. On Saturday, U.S. forces seized another Venezuelan oil tanker. In a pre-dawn operation on Saturday, the U.S. Coast Guard seized a Panama-flagged vessel called Centuries. A U.S. official told the CBS News that the interdiction of the vessel followed a similar playbook to an earlier U.S. seizure of an oil tanker near Venezuela, while House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly said on social media that the vessel on Saturday was a falsely flagged vessel operating as part of the Venezuelan shadow fleet to traffic stolen oil and fund the narco-terrorist Maduro regime. Really? Huh. I'm sure that stolen oil is ours, right? That's our oil. Needless to say, the Venezuelans were furious. They accused the U.S. of committing a serious act of piracy. In a statement on Saturday, the Venezuelan government condemned the vessel seizure, saying that it was a serious act of piracy. The columnist model that the U.S. government seeks to impose. Oh, the colonialist. That's what I should have said. I thought it was called the colonialist model that the U.S. government seeks to impose through such practices will fail and be defeated by the Venezuelan people, unquote, the statement said. Now, of course, now that the ball is rolling, the U.S. does not intend to stop. On Sunday, it was being reported that that U.S. forces were pursuing yet another oil tanker. That was today. The United States is pursuing an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, according to multiple reports, just a day after the Coast Guard seized a different tanker in the same waters amid a rapid U.S. military buildup in the region. If seized, it would mark the third U.S. interception of an oil tanker in less than 2 weeks, an official told Reuters on December 21st. The tanker was under sanctions, and it had been boarded. It had not been boarded so far. Officials did not give a specific location for the operation or name the vessel being pursued. The pursuit of the oil tanker comes less than a week after President Donald Trump ordered a blockade of all sanctioned ships from entering and leaving Venezuela, further pressuring the oil-rich nation's economy. U.S. Senator Rand Paul is calling the seizure of these tankers a prelude to war. Here, he is quite right about that. And now the Venezuelan Navy will be escorting at least some of these tankers. The shooting could begin at any time. That's what I've been saying. Venezuela has ordered its Navy to escort its tankers carrying petroleum products from its ports after President Trump declared a complete and total blockade on sanctioned tankers going in and out of Venezuela, the New York Times reported on Wednesday. The report said that several ships sailed from Venezuela's east coast with a naval escort on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. U.S. forces already boarded and seized one tanker last week and intend to steal the cargo. If the U.S. attempts to seize another tanker, it could now lead to a direct clash with the Venezuelan Navy. People need to understand that this isn't just Venezuela that we are making angry. Approximately 40% of the oil that Cuba imports comes from Venezuela. And we are being told that if oil is cut off from the Cuban economy could collapse. That if oil is cut off, the Cuban economy could collapse. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be pissing off Russia as well. Not just Cuba, not just Venezuela, and who knows, maybe China is going to also be very eyeing this moment too as an opportunity to facilitate problems. We'll just say problems in the U.S. Venezuela remains Cuba's most important energy supplier, covering roughly 40% of its oil. Wow, Havana needs to import. While shipments have already fallen sharply from their peak years ago, analysts warn that any further disruption could have catastrophic consequences. Energy experts say a sharp drop in Venezuelan crude could likely trigger a full-scale economic collapse on the island. And as I discussed last week, China imports more oil from Venezuela than the rest of the world combined. This blockade is going to be really bad for our relationship with China, and that could end up having enormous implications for us all. Absolutely. Michael Schneider is absolutely right. Meanwhile, the Russians continue to take control of more territory in Ukraine. Russian forces have taken control of settlements of Izhok in the Sumy region, and I won't even try to pronounce these names, in the Donetsk People's Republic. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported in its daily briefing. Svitol is located between Pakrovsk and whatever. These are all in the Belgrade region. The Defense Ministry regularly reports on settlements coming under Russian control in the zone of the military operation. Just all that to say, Russia is taking huge swaths of territory. They are making great progress to the chagrin of NATO, which I believe NATO is completely falling apart. Okay. America's participation, I think that they're preparing for it to drop off. That's what they're all preparing for, is the exodus of the U.S. out of NATO. Every time the Russians move forward, our European allies will become more desperate to stop them, but the only way that Ukraine can win the war is if we get directly involved in the conflict. According to Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, this is ultimately what the EU and NATO want. She went on to accuse the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization of wanting to pull the U.S. into a direct battle with Russia. Deep staters foment fear. This is what they said, what Tulsi Gabbard said. Deep staters foment fear and hysteria as a way to justify the continuing of the war and their efforts to undermine President Trump's efforts towards peace, Gabbard said. And I do so in this case, in order to try and pull the U.S. military into a direct conflict with Russia, which ultimately is what the EU and NATO want. We cannot allow this to happen, she declared. So right now, the Ukrainians and the Europeans are working on a deal that they know with 100% certainty that the Russians will reject. When the Russians inevitably reject that deal, that will be used as justification for what they want to do next. And what they want to do next is certainly not a mystery, because they have been feverishly preparing for it. And that is true. The Europeans have been digging in, preparing for war with Russia. Just been reported in the last 48 hours that Poland has been putting up all kinds of dragon's teeth all along their border with Belarus, and I believe, is Russia a border there? I think it's Belarus, but that is an indication that they expect an imminent invasion. And if you don't know what dragon teeth are, they're these big, they look like big, what are those, like, those little spinning top things that they basically are huge concrete barriers that look like spiders that they put all along the coast so that tanks can't get through. Okay, and so that's what they're doing right now. They're putting these barriers up. They could be steel, they could be concrete, but I think the ones I saw that were being put up feverishly all along their borders are concrete. And this is what's going on. And then you got Europeans preparing their sons and daughters for war. You've got their generals coming out telling everybody in the public that war is inevitable and that we need to make sacrifices. And not to mention the bomb shelters are being, prepared and getting everything ready all over Europe. This is happening all over Europe. So things are about to change. And then on Sunday, the IDF conducted more strikes on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. The Israeli military said that Sunday it targeted Hezbollah operatives in strikes in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese health ministry reported one person was killed and another wounded. Israel has kept up regular strikes on Lebanon, usually saying it is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure or operatives violating the 2024 ceasefire. Hezbollah is supposed to disarm, but that never was going to happen. So the IDF is just going to keep hitting them. And according to NBC News, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be soon presenting options for attacking Iran again to President Trump, just like I had told you guys. So the Israeli officials have grown increasingly concerned that Iran is expanding production of its ballistic missile program, which was damaged by Israeli military strikes earlier this year, and are preparing to brief President Donald Trump about options for attacking it again, according to a person with direct knowledge of the plans, and 4 former U.S. officials briefed on the plans. So they have to ask permission, I guess, from Messiah Trump. And obviously he's preparing for the rebuild of the Third Temple and overseeing the peace program. Right now, he is the chairman of the board of the peace program that oversees the rebuilding of Gaza with his 10 regional states that are going to be also in support and also a part of, as you would say, stakeholders. 10. That sounds kind of biblical, doesn't it? Yeah, it is 10 because it said it in the articles, okay? So it is 10, and I can show you all those articles that say it's 10. So Trump overseeing as the chairman of the Board of Peace. Tell me that don't sound biblical. And he's pitching his tents right there, the royal tents, between the sea and the Holy Mount, right there in Gaza. Something that many scholars have said Antichrist would do. And that sounds to me like that's the fulfillment of that scripture. And here we go. Israeli officials are also concerned that Iran is reconstituting nuclear enrichment sites that the U.S. bombed in June, the sources said, but they added that the officials view Iran's efforts to rebuild facilities where they produce the ballistic missiles and to repair its crippled air defense systems as more of an immediate concern, right? Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are expected to meet later this month in Florida at the president's Mar-a-Lago estate. At that meeting, the sources said Netanyahu is expected to make the case to Trump that Iran's expansion of its ballistic missile program poses a threat that could necessitate swift action. The Israelis and the Iranians both clearly understand that their fight is not over. Both sides are getting ready for the next round. 2025 has been a chaotic year, but I expect 2026 to be even crazier. The drumbeats of war are getting louder, and if we don't turn back now, the death and destruction that we will witness will be off the charts. And I agree. I agree. So, as we said, the most important thing you can do is prepare your hearts and your soul in true obedience via faith, and faith that comes by hearing and hearing by the word. How do you have faith? Well, God has to call you. You have to know that he's chose you, right? And how do you, many are called, but few are chosen. How do you get into the chosen status? You respond. You do. You hear and you obey. All right. When he calls, you answer and don't delay. Do what he calls you to do. Spend time seeking, spend time knocking, spend time asking. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for God is at work within you, both to will and to work of his good pleasure. Now, don't be like Nicki Minaj, who started going to church and heard the call, got baptized at a young age, and then faded away and started getting caught up in entertainment. She used to go to church 3 times a week. She got baptized. She believed. She had fellowship. She was all part of the church. And then what happened? A lot of these stars do the same thing. I mean, they're all, in the church choir. That's where they get their debut. And then they get caught up into the entertainment and they lose their way. And then they just don't listen anymore. And then they're just going to be saying on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not do all these things in your name, Lord? Did we know who you were? We got baptized. We did all these things. But the Lord is going to say to them on that day, I never knew you. You worker of iniquity. You promoted a false gospel. You comforted everybody in their sins. You didn't call them to repent. You didn't show them the way. You didn't teach them the truth. You weren't a good example. And so we have to be a good example. We have to tell people the truth. We have to call them to true repentance and what it means to truly follow Christ. What does it mean to pick up your cross and follow him? Well, we do that every day here on our morning broadcast. If you want to be a part of that, just type in BP Ministries, and get connected to that channel, or you can go to the links in the description on the main page. You'll see featured channels down there. It's the one with the purple background. Same fire logo, but the purple background. Get connected. We get into the depths of teaching the scriptures, prayer, and also a true worship gathering where we all gather in his name. If you're a believer, wherever 2 or more of you are gathered in his name, he's there. He becomes more apparent or more present. I won't say more present. I think what happens is he manifests his presence in a different way when we gather in his name. And where 2 or more you agree as anything that they shall touch, and they pray in agreement, they will have it. There's something about gathering where 2 of you or more are gathered. the scripture does seem to indicate that there is an awareness. See, like when we're here, there's Christians that are listening to me right now. There is a presence that you should be able to sense in this conversation. And if you're outside of Christ and you're kind of looking in, you still should be able to sense it. You should be drawn to it. You're either going to be repelled or drawn, one of the two. If you're stiff-necked and steeped in your way and your own will, you're probably going to be repelled by what I say. It's not going to make sense. And I'm going to tell you what, the gospel is an upside down kingdom compared to the way the world works. It's totally opposite. The least shall be the greatest, and the greatest shall be the least. Come without money and without price, buy and eat. Fulfill your heart's desire in the riches of heaven. It's not about money. A lot of times people say, well, religion's all about money. Well, it is in many ways, false religion. And yeah, there's a lot of false Christians out there. I call them out all the time. And they hate it. I've had huge backlash from Christians that are mad at me because I expose their unfruitful deeds of doctrines and of demons. I just posted an example the other day of somebody that was telling me to repent and go bow down before Kenneth Copeland. I don't know if they know Kenneth Copeland or not. I know they have a lot of money, but they wanted me to repent by bowing down and giving him money. Now, I don't know if they were going to they were going to somehow do something if I did that. I don't know. I'm not going to go that route because obviously it's not about money. It's about the truth. And that is the most important riches you could ever have in your life, is the riches of what is true, what is called wisdom, right? That is the gold, silver, and precious stones that are going to be laid up as an investment in your as an eternal treasure. So think about that, because it's only accruing in its value and its interest as time goes on. You could kind of liken it to gold and silver right now, and what would be, things that are going to increase in value. Spiritually speaking, you should be investing in your heart, and your treasure should be in heaven. Amen. Hey, we need treasures here on this earth for a period of time in order to facilitate the message, and that's all it's all about. It's just getting the message out. So if you want to stand behind what we're doing, also get connected with us, lock arms, invest, and watch many, many souls come into the kingdom. Amen. Continue to support what we do through prayer, share our videos, and in every other way. God bless all of you out there in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen, brothers and sisters, and all you that are out there listening. Jackie, Sherry, Genac, Teresa Valdez, Arnold Schmidt, Drops Homestead. Love you all in Jesus' name. Cindy Paul, Scott Guthrie, and everyone else that's out there listening. God bless you all, and have a